And we're back. So apparently it wasn't that he was eating his food, it's that it takes him that long to actually go down the elevator. Pick it up and come back up. That is a distance. But one I can understand. It wasn't that long of a wait. We're finally ready. They also had to do their vetoes. There's a best of 5 qualifying match. If you want to watch the other qualifying match currently happening, that is going to be over on Creighton Olsen's channel. I think he's still waiting for the winner of Cat's T-Rule, but yeah, he'll be casting that. So it might work out that I cast this and then it kind of smoothly transitions anyways, and I'll host him if that is the case. Case does not have a T in it, if that is the case. Yeah. It's the first qualifying match for the last Cheesadelphia Qualifier. 3 total, 8 total qualification spots, 4-2-2. Did the math correctly, right? We had a lot of Europeans qualify in the first round. Last week, Dolan barely held on for the North Americans against Gung Fu Banda. It was a kind of a big upset there. And now we actually are down to the guys I would expect to make it through a Cheesadelphia qualifier. I mean, the qualifier has been open to anyone who wants to participate, but it is naturally default on the NA server. And these guys are some of the guys that I just anticipate seeing in these North American tournaments. I'm gonna say these type of tournaments, and it's just like, what do you mean types of tournaments? What are you trying to say? But yeah, North American tournaments. So I'm excited. I do believe Robbie will be taking this series. He says he has a very high win record in PvT. He should feel comfortable against Cuddlebear. But he also mentioned that Cuddlebear and them played recently, and that he might know his builds. So that might change things up. Regardless, Everdream, best of 5, top right for Roots, it is Robbie. In the bottom left is the green Terran for Alpha X Gaming, it is Cuddlebear. Good old-fashioned TVP. I mean, knowing builds in this matchup, in any matchup, is pretty important. There are certainly scenarios where you'll see a very direct, like, oh, he knew what was going to happen, and he played it beautifully. I would say that's not often the case, though. You know, like, it's so much more about what you do with the armor you get to, than it is about finding a timing that's going to punish someone going for a blink first opener type thing, you know? It can happen. There are some things that are trickier to deal with than others, and there's a way to hide, you know, scouting away from the Protoss and all that, but I'm actually not so worried as far as, like, knowing the build order things. It's really, like, it's a huge concern if you are a one-trick pony and you're going to DT rush every game. And then you're in trouble. But if it's, like, a macro build, the reason why macro builds can be so good, and why they're done so often, is because they actually can adapt to people who are trying to, quote-unquote, hard counter them. Now, in this case, Cuddlebear is going to go for a Medevac Hellion drop, which I just think is a good choice in general. You're going to see Hellions as Robbie, and you're going to be wondering, first, is it just 2 defensive Hellions that kind of help against this adept pressure instead of making a bunker and it gets all weird? Or is it actually 4 Hellions? That's the first thing he has to think of. If he plays the safe card and says it's going to be 4 or 6 or whatever, I'm going to wall off my front. That's what he does. Unfortunately, there's just no way for you to actually scout that it's going to be a proxy starport unless you start scouting for a proxy starport. So the wall off on the main is not the end-all be-all like it would against just the Hellions. So this should still be a decent amount of damage done by Cuddlebear. If you get like a sentry second or something like that, I guess the Phoenix would see this in time. Actually, maybe not even. It's pretty darn fast, man. But your best bet is to wall up the front and then start guarding your main, which is exactly what Robbie went to do. But you only have so many units as the Protoss player. The probes actually go for a big surround, not just trying to stop the Hellions and kill them, but also hopefully not lining up in the process of the surround. It can sometimes be the way you work things out, but Cuddlebear also with a quick pickup stopped them from being surrounded, got 10 probes. Now that was at the total loss of all of his units. And Robbie didn't just wall this off because he could wall this off and because it would be safe against just the regular Hellion opener. He also straight up got 4 gateways. All right, that's 1 more or even 2 more than usual, depending on what build you do. And then he also got a warp prism. So he is planning on immediately getting revenge, and this can be a tough thing to defend against. The flexibility of the Warp Prism, the micro of the Blink, it's very tough to defend against, but Cuddlebear actually figured this out. He knew this is what would happen. The tank's on a good position, but the bunker was not done. The tank gets 2 shots, and they're pretty good shots, but they take out mostly the shields. He needs a 3rd and 4th shot to actually start hitting into the hull of the Stalkers. He also needs to take out this Warp Prism, and unfortunately not target firing it with the very few number of Marines he has anyways. It seems like this is going to be just way too much damage, actually. This is game-ending damage. Tank, okay, it's going to go down. And so even if it didn't, it's still game-ending damage. The Warp Prism's not going to get another warp in. That's the good news, but it was already terrible news when I got the first warp in. 33 SCVs down. Hard to say how this could have been much different. If the bunker was done, a couple of the Stalkers are a little less healthy when they take out that tank. The tank is probably still assuredly going to go down. If he had targeted the Warp Prism here, maybe that is going to stop him from taking more damage, but he was going to take a big loss, kind of no matter what. Banshee gets 4 probes, that's it. 37 workers to 10. Robbie should be feeling pretty good about this. He I don't know if he predicted a medevac drop and like intentionally did this, or if this is something that he does in response, right? Like he gets 4 gateways because it has to wall off like this. It's just a big wall off. And if he is getting Hellion dropped, he goes for the Warp Prism. If he isn't, he actually just goes for the 3rd Nexus. Maybe it's something like that. But absolutely, this was a great opportunity to have that he built for himself to even be able to initiate such a strong and swift counterattack. More gateways coming down. No forges. Robbie's just gonna go try and cut the throat right now. Doesn't even get charged. Just continuing to invest in a lot of Blink Stalkers. Quick check in the main. I think it's more of a scout. Ooh, but he actually goes a little bit too deep. Close. I was gonna say it was more of a scout, seeing where the army was. It's gonna deny mining from the natural, while still getting a lot of probes back at home. He might have thought that was the single tank instead of the second tank. He takes a ton of damage on those Stalkers. Almost loses the Warp Prism as well. That was not quite worth it there. Still a lot of lost time. Not just mining time, because we're talking about 22 SCVs. There's not even that many SCVs mining at the natural, but actually SCV production time. It's probably what hurts the most from having to lift that command center. Robbie is going up to 53 workers, full saturation on 3 bases with very limited gas. He never even took a 3rd gas, which is typical for this type of, there we go, composition, this type of buildup. He is finally chronoing out that charge as well. Hasn't bothered to go checking around for the starport, so the Banshee might be able to get some more damage done. There are shield batteries, but if it goes undefended long enough, it will eventually, the shield battery will eventually run out of juice. Little cute trick, try and get a tank here. Also not really worth it. Even if he got 1 tank, I'm not sure that's worth it, because, well, in this case, Robbie just rebuilds like a 3rd Warp Prism, but I was going to say, a Warp Prism going down, kind of expensive for Zealots as well, but also you don't have to worry about a Warp Prism for at least like another minute. So Cuddlebear kind of with the go-ahead to go for the push. The Banshee's going to try and distract as well, or maybe catch a couple of units being warped in. Like a couple sentries, for instance, would be nice targets. No force fields, no guardian shield. But actually just ends up finding some sentry, or probes. Speaking of sentries, there are none. Guardian shield, super nice. Force field, super good. Like all these sentries are actually pretty helpful, but I'm not sure it actually matters. We should target the shield better, that's fine. But it's good, it's actually smart. There are so many Zealots right now, and Sim is not even on the way. He went for a combat shields push here, so the tanks really were the anchor to this. So the Zealots are slowly going down here. And no, okay, it's good. If there were no reinforcements, okay, if like all the gateways were unpowered or something, then there's a maybe, but easy clean up there. Cuddlebear, I mean, he knew that was kind of desperate. I'm surprised he actually stays in this game. The Observer, I think, was F2'd with this army, so it's not back at home defending, but there's so little cloak energy, and there's so little that Banshee can actually do to save this game. There's finally the break on the main. No tank he will not be able to hold, and Cuddlebear is going to lose game number 1. GG. Did an aggressive attack, did okay damage, but only if he survives the counter, which he did not. At no point did Robbie have to continue pressuring with that War Prism. I feel like he was just trying, he was kind of being fancy because he had his options open. Kind of like, you know, it might work. Let's see. All right, all right. Number 2, Eternal Empire. Our largest map in terms of like left to right, I think. Actually, Purity Industry can be pretty big if you consider that as well. I'm not sure. But it's usually one of our macro maps for sure. Where Everdream might not actually be that long rush distance-wise, or that short rush distance-wise, but still is a smaller map, less spaces, all that good stuff. Top right, up 1, it is Robbie. Bottom left is the Green Terran, it is Cuddlebear. I was trying to figure out, like, how do you hold that counter better? Bunker faster might have been able to help out. Maybe his production timing could have been better, because that's, I mean, that's probably the thing that makes the difference between an Innovation doing that build, or a Mara doing that build, and a Cuddlebear doing that build. It's slight stuff that really adds up. You know, the stacking of SCVs, no half-second delay of building an SCV, type of stuff. That leads you to have 300 minerals a little bit faster, and then you instantly place down 2 barracks on 300 minerals as opposed to on 400 minerals. Like, it's small stuff that really does add up, but it's also small stuff like that that helps a lot of the Terrans, especially in this matchup, which is why I'm, like, focusing in on it. But this matchup especially, is that we have a lot of attempts to replicate the pros with, like, a good tank push. Their 1-1-1 or 3-1-1 rather push off of a 1-1-1, and they're like, they die because their opponent's doing a well-executed blink charge opener, and they have a billion zealots, and they die, and they're like, well, I just literally die. Like, what's even the point of playing this damn game? And they kind of like miss the whole idea that your macro behind it is near flawless, so that when they crush your first army, which is unideal but happens, you actually have an army back at home to defend. Seems to be, like, I don't know, something that you see a lot in this matchup in particular. But I'm thinking because the matchup kind of gets heated from minute 3 or so. Thinking of TVZ, I always think of just, like, having 5 minutes kind of do my thing for the most part. In this matchup, there's a chance the Adept's getting into your main base. There's a chance you don't see what technology they're doing, so you're kind of guarding against a Stargate or a Twilight Council or a Robo. You're trying to do a Widowmine drop or a Hellion, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. But in that particular game, last game, like, it could have been just, like, 6 more Marines could have helped. The tank maybe could have been a little bit faster, the second tank, that is. Like, you'd have to analyze it yourself, basically, which, you know, Cuddlebear doesn't have time to do. I think just more importantly, all in all, Robbie had a nice setup to do what he did. The Hellion drop doesn't come in, if it was just 2 Hellions for kind of defense/scouting, and then he had 4 gateways and did the same War Prism attack, it's very possible that Cuddlebear holds with ease and is like, what are you doing? And then Robbie has a leader third, leader charge, leader upgrades, so on and so forth. But I think it makes a lot of sense for Cuddlebear not to do something like that again. Even if it was effective, you don't really do it twice in a row. He opens up with a single Hellion, but the Adept can tell it's not a factory reactor opener. It's a Twilight Council and a Robo right off the bat. So is this going to be DTs? No. No one does DTs this level. That'd be shocking to me. But it was a Twilight Council first, and then immediately a Robo. Huh. Is this what he did last game, and I just missed it because I was so focused on the medevac drop? It might be. Okay. I didn't realize this is what you did to do this build, basically. So you see these put down at the same time. It's a little off. A lot of the builds around the Twilight Council opener are like Twilight Council 2 Gateway Robo, Twilight Council 3rd Nexus if you're being super, super greedy, Twilight Council then Robo, a bit faster on the scouting, a little less on the... something combination of that. But for both to be slapped down, gives you that Warp Prism pretty quick, you chrono out the Blink, and then you do still have 4 Gateways. So this actually is just something that Robbie likes to do, apparently. Not necessarily... him predicting the Hellion drop. So, okay, alright. 3rd Nexus does come down. As far as saturating that, though, you can see he's not building probes. Well, he doesn't need to, actually. He'll saturate that later, start up probe production later, but again, no third gas. So this is just a different type of opener. Twilight Council opener, sure, but a lot more emphasis on actually doing a push with it. So, alright. The more aggressive form of this, which can be so tricky. You feel like an idiot when you die to this, to be honest. If you don't have anything else going for you, it's just like, oh, it's just like a bunch of gateway units. Super cool, super cool, super cool. But it is powerful. Cuddlebear has Banshee tank, 2 bunkers. He knows exactly what he's up against. He knows how Robbie plays. His Banshee actually got to the main base and saw. Well, nothing defending it. Didn't quite give enough of a heads up to Cuddlebear, though, to protect his bunker. But that's okay. The bunker bought, 3 shots. Oh, the Warp Prism was left alone. This is exactly the type of game I'm talking about earlier when I said that it's very possible that Cuddlebear defends perfectly against the same type of push. And Robbie is in a lot of trouble. This isn't perfect, but it is a pretty damn good hold. These Stalkers are going to be able to retreat, but a lot of them will be injured. The Warp Prism went down with Zealots inside. Only... Wait, the bunker died in 1 tank? Nope, just the bunker, actually, and 7 SCVs. And a refinery. Oh, okay, I'll give you that one, but that's okay. Raven's actually an interesting thing to add on here. Ooh, barely saving that bunker. So much nicer than having to worry about that tank being jumped on. As the, it's not an observer that gives the ability to jump up. It could be later on, of course, but... The Raven might just be part of Cuddlebear's build. It is a very good, useful tool. A little hard to control, and, it is expensive. But it can be very important defensively and offensively. A little less defensively, I would say. Where the hell is the Banshee? There it is. Banshees! Okay, that's where they're racking up the kills. 9 kills, 10. Oh, another one. 11 kills, and the Banshee barely escapes. But yeah. Raven maybe a little less defensively, but ooh, interference matrix. Okay. Because auto turrets, I mean, they'll if they are left untargeted, they will do some serious damage. Interference matrix, probably the best thing, because that Warp Prism for sure. And then anti-armor missile also, still pretty good, but not something you usually see defensively. Not against Stalkers, but it's a big investment. He's going to have later stim and combat shields. With an opener like this, but he did successfully defend against this attack. The reason I'm really harping on this is not to judge him, but rather just because there is always that circumstance where, yes, you defended this push. If the goal is to push and the push doesn't work, the game does not actually end. Sometimes it does, but sometimes you contain, the opponent over-defends, is so scared of that push, they don't actually have a swift follow-up into a macro game. That happens a lot, and I'm worried that might be happening here. Now, Cuddlebear's going to have better upgrades. He will eventually have his 3rd CC on location. And he'll have a scary army. That amount of tanks, as long as they're not jumped on by Zealots without... being sieged are going to contribute. But Robbie's going to have 4 bases. Okay, well, that's not so good. I was going to say an okay number of stalkers, but it's a bad number of stalkers now. A good number of zealots. And at least he'll have that +1. But the 4 bases is what's a little bit scarier, because he's been saturated on it for a little while. Templar Archives and Robotics Bay coming down. Raven going for some auto turret harassment. Certainly a bad use of that. Oh, but back at home, the Warp Prism. So also the other thing Robbie had is a Warp Prism. Which is just so critical for trying to buy any amount of time. This actually gets cleaned up pretty quickly with a medevac drop response. That's nice. Oh, Stalkers. Ooh, good pickup. Go for the medevac snipe. Nicely done. But this is still buying an extra like 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds as it still continues on. And this is also important because Robbie's adding on those important tech structures and needs to actually use those tech structures. Because right now, they're just investments that haven't paid off. But if he continues buying time, then they absolutely will pay off. He also grabbed 10 SCVs in that attack, which actually only puts them at a 5 worker difference because I think the Banshee came back in. Or no, the Raven, that's right. But Robbie has 4 bases and could jump up in that probe count and actually use that probe count, whereas Cuddlebear is obviously restricted to 3 bases and is also going to be restricted to like 2 bases soon with the mining out that should occur from his main and natural. Continuing on with that whole point about the over defense, unfortunately I see that happening even more so here. It sounds very judgy, and it's like one of those things where the player would watch this and be like, well, of course I have to defend against this. It's fucking Warp Prism, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm totally with him. Like, this is so obnoxious that this one thing is actually, well, not anymore. That this one thing is keeping an attack back. Or even if it doesn't keep the attack back, is dividing your attention. And there's a reason you don't usually see the pros do to this type of stuff. You know, 4 missile turrets defending against a Warp Prism. Or turtling. As opposed to trying to do something out in the map. There's usually a reason. So Cuddlebear, he still is okay. I want to paint this as he's like losing his timing to get back into this game. They both are kind of evening out here, leveling off from the early game damage and hustle and bustle. The longer the game goes, the less that early game stuff will matter. So it is leveling off here, but I feel like Robbie, with the loss of his stalkers, with the initial attack not really doing a whole lot. I felt like Cuddlebear might have had something to do on the counter. But he didn't think so, didn't see an opportunity. And he could be very well right about that. But now it's going to be more of a maxed out scenario. Max to maxed. Robbie with both High Templars and Colossus available is going to now... Oh, Cuddlebear didn't get more upgrades. He's going to have better upgrades. That was one thing that Cuddlebear might have been able to keep is a upgrade lead. He did not. So Robbie's going to get the superior traits here. He's also going to get disruptors, which are going to force Cuddlebear to either split very, very well or go into liberators, which are going to drag him back to kind of turtling and kind of a slower pace game like it has been so far since the 7-minute mark. Last 5 minutes just been both of them powering up. Cuddlebear finally finding the courage to move out. Might be, like, slapped and, like, forced to whimper back home. If a Disruptor gets a good shot. Seen it happen. Seen it happen. That is a powerful army. The scan reveals every single part of that. The amount of Archons, the amount of Stalkers, the Disruptor. He's gonna get a good concave opportunity, so that's why Robbie's a little hesitant here. Robbie is also maxing out. He has equal upgrades right now. For 20 more seconds. It'll be different soon. That's Robbie has nothing going on the other side of the map. So Cuddlebear is getting his 4th base up and running as a planetary. That is great news. He's also finding a little bit of a location here to deny mining. And no 5th base will be coming down while this continues on. And I am truly scared for Cuddlebear's army here. You know, it's not just that he's missing Liberators. It's not that you need Liberators necessarily, but it's more that he's missing, like, Vikings. So he's gonna have to really hope for a good concave. Widow Mines are also now out of the equation, so it's getting even scarier. I really thought he was actually gonna fall behind on those upgrades, but I guess Robbie either wasn't chrono boosting his upgrades or just wasn't as imbalanced as I thought, but 2-2 is actually finishing up alongside Robbie's 2-2, and +3 has not yet started, so... Ooh, it's gonna get really awkward. Oh, this is so awkward. So he picks up and makes it look like the army moved back home, and Robbie kind of like falls for it a little bit. As I certainly would have expected Cuddlebear to go home for all the reasons I just listed about his army being potentially weak, but a recall is a pretty good thing to have as a Protoss player, and that actually gives me the opportunity to go for a big ol' surround, and there's not much that Cuddlebear can do. Some of his units even inside medevac still. Maybe some ghosts as well, so not getting as many EMPs as he would have wanted. Cuddlebear actually just falling down in supply so heavily, being forced to entirely retreat from that Nexus snipe. It absolutely was not worth it. What does he have back at home? He's down to 150 supply, and I don't even see where that supply is. Is it in medevacs? He's down 40 supply. His last hope is to hold against this army with the Planetary, which it is doing a fine job of taking on the Stalkers. The Colossus are a little late to the party. The Disruptors a little late to the party. The Planetary, actually a true hero in this regard, just took on like 20 Stalkers. Stalker's probably the thing that the Terran player wants the most to be fighting against when it comes to having a Planetary in bio, right? The charge outs are gone, the Colossus aren't firing on you. Please, bring on the Stalkers. Although not if you kill my 5th base. Please don't. But now that Robbie's army is together, all he needs is a War Prism here to really perfect it. It is back again to Cuddlebear being in a desperate scenario. He's also been outpositioned. He loses control of his 5th base. He has to reposition his tanks. He's going to lose his Ghost Academy as well. It's going to be tough getting up a ramp against Disruptor shots as well as Colossus. He loses mining on his 4th base. No thank you, SEDs. You can't do that. And Robbie, meanwhile, continues to grab his upgrades. So he should have an upgrade lead here. And Storm and even more Disruptors. Cuddlebear is trying to afford quadruple Liberators, which is a nice thing to do when you're in a desperate situation to hold. And on this map, too. This map's actually pretty good for recovering and getting a couple bases up. But also against the Disruptors, which are getting maybe not the most amazing shots, but they are getting worthwhile shots, and that one was pretty good there. Disruptors out taking out the SCVs, going for the mass repair. Big Stalker concave means that the Planetary will indeed eventually fall. They'll have a blink soon as well to take out the Liberators, which actually, they have to retreat. The army comes back, and that army was getting a little bit thin there for Robbie. And not thin enough. He tries to jump on top of everything. It's not going to work out. Liberators are a huge part of the defense there. And not being involved with the rest of the fight. It didn't go so well, but that game was already starting to get lost when he went for the Nexus snipe. I mean, from the totally biased Terran caster's perspective, I already felt like Cuddlebear was falling behind. I feel like while you can find Protoss at all skill levels who actually kind of do poorly against what Cuddlebear was doing, you know, the Terran kind of gets a little turtly, kind of just retreats into itself, doesn't really want to do a push or anything like that. Some Protosses are like, oh, I'll try and bust them or something, right? And they die. Or I'll just wait for them and then, oh no, they have 16 Liberators. Oh my god. Like, yeah, that can happen. But when a Protoss really knows their stuff, and Robbie's a pretty good Protoss, when a Terran player is forced to do what Cuddlebear did, either forced or just chooses to do so, more often you see the Protoss player just like kind of out-expand them, out-upgrade them, chip damage them to death. Liberator here, denied base over there. It's tough. And just to like, you know, be clear that I'm not trying to rag on Cuddlebear, like Cure has also done this a couple of times. And I feel like the only reason Cure ever like wins those games is because he really knows how to dig his nails into that ledge. And barely hold on, or Dream. Dream does it on that map as well. We'll do like a push or two and be like, well, I guess I'm staying at home. And he'll just barely be able to take good enough fights around Planetaries. So to me, it already looked like Cuddlebear was kind of hurting just pacing-wise in that game, but that snipe on the Nexus was also just unfortunately not worth it. Very good surround by Robbie. This game is DBZ confirmed. They're both yelling at each other. All right. Potentially last game of the series. In the bottom right, as the orange Protoss, it is Robbie. Up 2-0. In the top left, going for an early SEV. It is the green Terran Cuddlebear. You'll find a lot of situations, especially around... Well, let's be honest. You'll find a lot of situations where every Terran will say that TVP feels like an uphill battle. Let's be real, right? But I feel like especially around certain MMRs, like it kind of is that like waffling thing where like Diamond, it's fine. Masters is not fine. Masters 3, it's not fine. Masters, like whatever. I feel like, oh, did he see that? He did. Oh, and Cuddlebear didn't see that he saw that. Well, that's bad news. Anyways, but yeah, you'll occasionally see just like, you'll be able to tell. You'll be able to like physically tell. It's like a physical thing that just like seeps through the StarCraft game into you. You'll be able to tell when a Terran player is just one of those guys who's going to be like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, I see Maru do things, and I try to do things, it just doesn't work. And it's like, yeah, I feel you. It's tough. But then it does eventually swap back to a Protoss player having the same thing before anyone thinks I'm trying to balance wine. Like, not so much. Like, eventually it goes back to a Protoss player being like, well, I just get dropped everywhere, and like, it's absolute bullshit. But it's one of those things that seems to flip-flop depending on the MMR. You know, like the idea that like Storms are overpowered in Diamond League, but then Masters learn what Ghosts are, and it's like, ta-ha! I'm getting kind of those feels from Cuddlebear. Not just because of last game, because this game he is going for something pretty desperate. Proxying a barracks is one thing, to be a little cheeky and go into a macro game, but he is also going for a second barracks back at home. He knows he's been scouted with the SCV getting in the main base. Steals are gas, that's you know, clever, but he knew he was scouted when he saw the opener. Knows he's already in trouble. Kind of, I mean, it's not gonna do any damage, but it also has to worry about taking damage. You know, and as such, he's built a bunker and is turtling. Kind of. He's retreating into his shell. Like, this is my high ground main base. Please don't touch. Please don't hurt. It was a prank, bro. I didn't mean to Reaper you. It's a prank. Well, Robbie could have gone for 2 extra gateways in a robo. Yeah, I think the far better call would be to play into more of a macro game here. A little more of a macro game. Natural base, Twilight Council, robo. I think that's the best call there. So Cuddlebear, I mean, he has to be afraid of some type of counter, but if one isn't actually coming, then it's all wasted resources. Thank you, Captain Danger, for the Twitch Prime sub. Much appreciated. Twilight Council and Robo. I think it's the same. I think it's going to be the same thing. It's got that pylon at the front. Suspiciously looking to make a wall. There you go. He must find a lot of success with this, even if the Terran player initially defends. It does give him a lot of control. And, you know, speaking of the Terran experience, like, it's very scary to move out on the map against the Protoss player. You don't know if there's a Warp Prism hiding, waiting to run in. You don't know if there's an observer seeing you, judging your army, thus giving them ample opportunity to size up and actually attack you when they're least expecting it. You know, they're like, oh, I'm just going to push them to the third, and then their army's actually in the middle of the map, and you're like, no, why? And you also don't know if they're just sharking around. Not necessarily that they see you coming, but that their army is also out in the map, and you get surrounded. It can be very frightening. So with what Robbie's doing, I would say that it's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to be the frightening big bad Protoss who has maybe not the best upgrades, maybe not much technology, maybe not even the best economy. You know, but it's like it still is going to be out in the map constantly pressuring you and making you fearful. That must be a very frustrating style to play against when you don't have the whatever magic ingredient that actually makes this look silly. That's when you pay Maru $200 and say, face this guy and tell me what to do. And then Maru's like, you just micro better, I don't understand. And you're like, oh, God. Combat shields is almost done, so Cuddlebear was thinking of a push, but he is the one getting pushed. So while combat shields actually be useful defensively, well, I'll explain the dynamic in a second. Cyclone Lock on a Warp Prism was a good idea, but only gets rid of the shields, not the whole. Stalkers had to blink forward to take it out, though, and they did take a lot of damage. What I was going to say is, while combat shields are helpful defensively, they are definitely more of a push type of upgrade if you get that first. Say you do defend perfectly and combat shields help, great, fantastic. You still have a lot of Protoss pressure, all the things I just mentioned. They're going to have the entire map to retreats. His stim ain't going to be, not going to be down, you can't catch up to him. Oh, actually, what just killed 6 probes? Oh, a Liberator. Not too shabby there, Liberator. 7 probes. Anyways, yeah, you're not going to be able to catch up to him because you don't have stim. Can't chase down the stalkers trying to retreat. They're going to have plenty of time to warp in back at home and hopefully hold against whatever combat shields push you do have. And stim is that longer upgrade. So you're also just pushing off the, what is the most important upgrade for Terran. So it's like it helps, but is it better than having stim and like just trying to do like a more of a normal macro push? Yeah, I don't know. It is a lot up to Robbie controlling this correctly. If he dives and doesn't work out, he loses almost all of his army. He does not have good upgrades. He does not have a ton of charge loss. Like, he would have to be scared of a counter. But as we saw last game, even when he didn't have the most beautiful opener with this style, he kind of lost a lot of stalkers. He still is able to control the map, control the game, control the pacing, control Cuddlebear's mind enough that he was able to win the game. He has actually changed things up a little bit as far as the follow-up goes. So a faster fourth, I want to say, maybe not by very much, but I want to say a faster fourth, but +1 attack as opposed to +1 armor. I'm actually really surprised by that. He did go into Colossus eventually last game, but like, what, minute 11? And that is the dynamic of Zealots, is that you want them to get to their opponent and then stay there and provide a buffer, not only deal the damage they deal. That's where +1 is really helpful. +1 armor is really helpful. So we see +1 attacks a little bit interesting. I think Trap did this once, though. Not enough stalkers to kill this fast enough because Robbie is paying attention and warping in elsewhere. He warps in the main base, and Cuddlebear this time is just going to say, you know what, F it. I'm just going to go for it. He gets 9 probes. We'll be losing a lot more SCVs on the backside. Robbie is going to hope that he spends time killing this 4th Nexus. He's going to hope that he spends time killing this 3rd because he needs to actually be warping in units elsewhere. And like the main base or the natural, this is turning into a base trade. 3rd CC isn't even lifted. And that is unfortunate. No medevacts have been produced either, and that alone might be what actually makes the biggest difference. Another command center goes down without being lifted, and there's not that many stalkers. It's actually a big deal. This could be a true base race, a true, like, oh, I can actually land my CC somewhere and start building again. Thank God I saved all my orbitals. Or maybe this just actually goes for Cuddlebear's victory. I mean, his tank's getting into a very abusive position. He's going to take out his opponent's production, but his production is also being camped. I don't know, man. Robbie has an upgrade. He has a bigger army supply. It's not the upgrade I expected, but it's still an upgrade that certainly helps. Stalkers are a little more potent than you would expect. He's got 2 Artosis pylons, which sucks for Robbie there. He's going to warp in 7 Zealots. Oh, no, get the okay, well. Doesn't matter. 7 Zealots already warped in. Lifted buildings everywhere. Command Center did barely survive. But Robbie, he's going to have a 4th base mining. It's better that he didn't waste time over there, I suppose, but he should get on top of it with something. He does need to clear out the main base, and he does have to be careful moving away from any of these chokes. If he is away trying to kill this base, and he's got full surround potential here, he's straight up going to die. So it's like, okay, you kind of have to stop this from mining, but also, can you stop this from mining? I'm not so sure. He sends a small pack of Marines with a medevac, and that is a good choice, because hopefully they'll be able to evacuate. He re-sieges his tanks on the high ground, of which the high ground vision will disappear. It has disappeared. And the medevac drop did manage to successfully escape back to the main base, so very nicely done there by Cuddlebear. Really trying to make something out of this last game here, but oh, I talked about high ground vision. I was wrong. There's an observer. All right, so he's gonna have high ground vision. 3 tanks will still take they'll do a lot of damage, but the Zealot's going first. No chance he can focus fire the Stalkers, really. He tries to focus fire the Stalkers because that's the most effective thing a tank can do. He doesn't. I mean, he gets a lot of their shields gone. The Zealots actually are forced to retreat here. This high ground advantage, very important, but the medevacs aren't. There's no medevacs to heal. This would be so different if there were 5 medevacs and 2 more Marauders. Forget about it. Actually, like, I don't know if I gave it to Robbie then, but I'm like, oh, hold on here. But all Robbie needed to do was wait for the shields to regen. And GG, well played. Robbie with the 3-0 of Cuddlebear takes one of the last remaining qualification spots. Really showing he's a very good Protoss. He beat Robbie pretty